I'll call this meeting back to order. For the record, the public hearings for ordinance 2202 and 03 are now closed, and I would certainly entertain a motion one way or another for ordinance 22-02, and we do need separate motions for both. We can address each one at a time.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion.
Please.
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 22-02 and adopt the original findings of fact in the packet based on the staff recommendation.
Is there a second to the motion? And the motion does die for lack of a second. Giuseppe?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, but I just need a split second to find the perfect
Take your time.
wording. Sorry about that.
Order it.
I move to deny the proposed PUD and the rezoning and accept the finding of facts of the planning board.
Can we just address ordinance 22-02 first, and then we can move on to the
absolutely.
rezone.
Just the first ordinance, 22-1.
So there is a motion to deny ordinance number 22-02. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor Norton. Discussion, Giuseppe?
Yes, yes, Mayor. Sadly, this PUD has become an issue about affordability of housing. And as leaders in this city, I believe we need to follow the letter of the law. And I'm learning that staff has done an amazing work working with the developer, the applicant, to make sure this project is shaped in ways that checks all the boxes and is moved forward. Then we have a planning board, and the planning board has sat through their meetings. They've done an amazing piece of work to study and to define findings, and they have addressed every single one of those, accepting 1, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, not accepting 2, 4, 7, 10. 10, by the way, it's the growth policy, 11, 12, 13, and 14. I think that I'm much more ignorant than those two teams. I think we have a planning board for a reason. And while I believe that this city needs to keep moving long-term planning in zoning, legislating, to make sure there is room for workforce housing. I'm skeptical about affordable housing, but that's a different discussion. But housing that people who work and serve us and serve the community can afford. I believe the issue should be separated from this PUD. And for that reason, I'm going with the recommendation of the planning board.
Thank you, Giuseppe. Further comments on the motion? Rebecca?
Yeah, I would have loved to approve this to get this amount of housing, but the overwhelming opposition is kind of the tell for me that we're not moving in the right direction for a number of people. But there's a lot of things I really like about the project, and so I'm hoping that you'll come back in with some changes to the way that it's configured. When I was the chair of the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Plan, and at that time, for instance, I think the commercial space could work if it was much smaller. And I wasn't sure, we didn't really decide that the roundabout was an appropriate thing at that time, but after listening to all the traffic engineers, I think it could actually work as long as pedestrian use was incorporated. I personally have some issues with the water risks down in that area, because we have had a failure of a fish pond years before, and it went all the way down to the Houston Point area, and so I'm not sure I really, I'm not sure if we vetted the retention pond as much as we should have. But anyways, bottom line is, if we see overwhelming public opposition, I usually will do the will of the people that I represent. And I'm hopeful that it won't mean that we never get any more housing. So that's what I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Frank?
Mr. Mayor and Giuseppe, if I might proffer a couple of further thoughts and amendments to the findings that were delivered to us by staff that I think reflect what we've all learned over the past 5 or 6 public hearings. I'd like to change finding 2 in the staff report to state that the development is and may not be sensitive to and respectful to the wildlife habitat or seasonal migration corridors that are there. I'd like to change finding 4 of the staff report to state that the development will not preserve and protect the character and qualities of the existing neighborhoods. The existing neighborhoods are suburban density homes or on large wooded lots. The scale, quality, and density of development cannot be integrated in the existing surrounding neighborhoods, nor can it be effectively buffered. I'd like to change finding 10 to state that the development does not substantially comply with the 2007 City-County Growth Policy or the Wisconsin Corridor Plan. The 2007 Growth Policy designates the property as suburban residential, as described as predominantly single-family homes with low density. The development will not further the future land use goals of preserving and enhancing the character, qualities of the small town feel and ambience of the Whitefish community. It likewise will not further the goals of protecting and preserving the special character, scale, and qualities of the existing neighborhoods. The development will not further the transportation policy of encouraging sustainability in all aspects of transportation, so that the needs of the present are met, while ensuring the future generations have some better opportunities. While the Wisconsin Corridor Plan designates the property as key development areas, it also provides that it should be developed in a manner to preserve the most of its suburban character. A 270-unit apartment buildings will not are not consistent with the suburban character. The development does not further the goals and policies of the corridor plan, and it does not provide diverse housing in the corridor while protecting the community character and existing neighborhoods. It does not support cohesive, distinctive, diverse residential neighborhoods that are compatible with existing neighborhoods. It does not encourage unified development that mitigates the potential impacts on adjacent neighborhoods and reflects the neighborhood scale and character that contributes to the vibrant corridor. It is not in accordance with the growth policy. It is not designed to secure safety from fire and other dangers due to its density and probable traffic impacts. It is not designed to promote public health, public safety, and general welfare due to its density and probable traffic impacts. I'd like to change finding 13 to the development does not provide adequate community benefits. I'd like to change finding 1 of the zone change, we'll get to that in a moment. Those would be my suggested edits to the findings if this proceeds.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment to the original motion. Is there a second?
Frank, under 2, did you under finding number 2, where it talks about wildlife, are you saying there isn't wildlife there?
No, I'm saying it
Okay.
is not sensitive to the wildlife corridors that go through the
Right,
area.
okay, thank you.
Again, I'll take that as a friendly amendment to the findings of fact.
I
Is
just
there a
have a quick
second to the
question.
motion? Let me get a second on the floor, Steve, please.
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Fury. Steve?
I'm just confused as to what, I mean, we don't have a definition of a clear community benefit. We have like a list of several things that can be considered a clear community benefit. And so I'm wondering what it is you're seeing that would change that last, the last finding of fact that you mentioned, that it does not promote it, does not provide a clear community benefit.
Okay, would you like me to articulate?
Sure.
I can do this. The development is only providing 32 build deed restricted apartments out of 270, while the applicant is offering 8.8 acres to be developed with 48 affordable units. It is not proposing to build those units. The additional property is not located in an area that's suitable for affordable housing, given the traffic challenges on Wisconsin and its distance from services. The applicant is offering 1.5 acres for a fire station, but is not proposing to build the fire station or contribute to its construction, and the fire station is not within the city's budget. The applicant is offering to install a roundabout, but we have no approval for that, and nor has he given us any approval from NBT that could and will be an actual roundabout, or that it will in fact benefit. So that's the reason I asked for that change.
Okay. I take objection to the way several of those were worded based on the facts that we have in the packet, particularly the roundabout, because that was identified even by the opposing traffic study person as a way that would mitigate the traffic at that intersection, for one. Just as a matter of course. I know it's not approved by the MDOT yet, but according to the packet, it had to be constructed before anything could be built on that property. So, I mean, it doesn't matter, but I think that I honestly don't see how anybody would ever give more than this on a PUD and not have it, and us say, well, that's not a clear community benefit. Even 32, you're saying we're only getting 32, they don't have to give us any. I mean, that's how much, I don't understand, like, what defines a clear community benefit if even that is not enough. So,
Giuseppe?
Yes, just a point of clarification, Frank. If I'm correct, my motion is accepting the finding of facts of the planning board.
Correct.
Okay, so unless I misunderstood you, your findings, your request for amendment changes the wording, but not the substance of all those findings. Am I correct? Because the planning board found 2, 4, 10, and 13 as non-fulfilling. So we're confirming similar things, but you put in more words.
And I added a few others
Okay.
that they did not pick up on.
Okay, perfect. Just making sure I understood.
Further discussion on the friendly amendments to the findings. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry on a 5-1 vote with Councilor Quinnell voting in opposition, which brings us back to the original motion, which is for denial of ordinance 22-02. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
I'd like to make some comments, Mr. Mayor, if I could, on the original motion, please.
Certainly.
I know it's late, but I think there are some things that need to be said here, because it seems like after all this, I've sat through about 14 hours now of public comment, and it's taking us less than 10 minutes to deny this thing. And I think there are some things that need to be said. And with respect to the findings of fact, we are summarily disregarding what our own staff has said and taking the word for it from a group that was designed solely to oppose this project based on their analysis, based on the people that they paid to analyze this. And I think I don't think that does our community a great service, to be honest with you. But I would like to just address one thing that Rebecca said, in that the will of the people, we can't make a decision based on the will of the people. We have to make a decision based on the facts. And I get it. We have a disagreement on the facts here, and that's fine. But if we solely bend to the will of the people anytime that they disagree with what is coming or what is proposed, that is doing a disservice to us as what we're up here for. We are supposed to listen to the people and take their concerns into account, and I get it. I disagree with the way that it's been proposed on the other side. But just because 3,800 people disagree doesn't give us the leverage to say no to something. And I would like to address some of the public input. I hear everyone out there that disagrees with this as a too dense, in the wrong place. I get it. Nobody wants to drive by and increase traffic over there. But we act like if we deny this project, that somehow nothing's going to get built on the north side of the viaduct without us declaring a moratorium, like Ms. Morrison said, on growth north of the viaduct. I'd like to see us try to pass that and see what we get, see what happens in our community and also in our state. We're not going to stop development north of the viaduct. And with every single new home built and new condo built up on Big Mountain, the traffic is going to get worse. It's going to get worse. And there's nothing we can do to stop it, unless we can look at projects like this and say, wow, we're actually getting something in return for something that is built there. And in this case, I do think there is a clear community benefit. We're getting 32 units, and we're getting at least some traffic mitigation. We're getting a place to put our fire station, which the chief is on board with. We're not going to build it yet. We can't. It's not in the budget, but we have a place for it. We also have to have land for a fire station. So, I've read through all the public comment. One in particular said we need to deny this to send a message that Whitefish is closed. Whitefish is closed to development. What we're about to do is send the message that Whitefish is closed to the working class, because we have been faced with project after project after project to include affordable housing in our community, and every time we sit up here and deny it, and I've been part of planning boards that have denied it, and I have voted against it on council on one occasion, and I can't do it anymore. We are at a crisis, and we have to address this. And addressing it in the public-private sector, I called the Whitefish Housing Authority. You know how much money's been donated to housing Whitefish? $17,000. That's how much our public-private partnership is in the black right now. So, people are saying that this is going to destroy our town. Well, let's look at what has destroyed Aspen and Crested Butte and Winter Park and Jackson. Did it die because they built apartment complexes there? No, it died the death of 1,000 cuts. All of the working class was forced out, forced down valley. The very same thing is happening here. The only place that's building apartments is Kalispell, and they just finished some in Columbia Falls. Where is that traffic going? A lot of it's going over the viaduct and up the mountain. Thinking that denying this is not gonna impact our traffic problem, anytime somebody moves to this place, it's going to impact traffic on Wisconsin. Another thing I want to talk about is managing growth responsibly, because I've been called to the carpet a couple times in the course of this project. And I want everyone to know, in this room and online, that I make my decisions based in fact and what the impacts these developments will have on our town. And I would love to be able to fund a petition against incorporating any new hotel rooms or any new beds for tourists. Yet that's what we've faced in the last 2 months, and we've approved one of them, and we fought one of them, and we might lose in court on the other. So, but not one single person in this room who opposed this project came out and opposed providing more beds for tourists in this town. Not one single person. Okay, maybe Rhonda. So tell me, is it responsible to approve more housing for tourists and short-term residents while denying long-term housing for working people? Is that responsible growth? I don't think so. And I think everyone in here feels that and knows that deep down in their bones. So my heart aches tonight. It honestly does. This town, maybe it has changed. Maybe it's changed to the point where we say we want affordable housing, we say we support affordable housing, but we're just not willing to have it anywhere near us unless we can find some city-donated land that's out of the way that nobody really sees because it's off of a dirt road. It seems like that's where we are today.
Steve, we've got a couple counselors that would like to provide some comment as
Okay,
well.
I'll finish here, but I'm going to take my time. I'm going to read to you an email I got from the homeless housing coordinator for for Kalispell Public Schools. Hello, KPS employees. Some of you know I'm a teacher in Flathead High School. As you've likely heard by now, extended stay guests at the Fairbridge, aka the Outlaw, have been given eviction notices. By the end of next week, it's likely we'll have a handful of families in our district with nowhere to go. Vacancy rate in this valley is 0.4%, which means there aren't many options. We need your help. If you or someone you know has rental property or any alternative that could prevent these families from being on the street, a camper, a vacant rental, etc., please reach out. The HEART program has been in touch with the families in our district and is offering assistance financially if they can find a vacancy. The problem is real. I deal with it on the front lines every day of the week. Some of these kids are in my classroom. Some of these kids are in classrooms here in Whitefish. So, the last thing I want to say is, what makes a community? Because I think that's what we're losing sight of here. The community that is Whitefish once was a diverse community where people who made living wages versus people who had other careers lived next door to each other. And we're losing that. We are losing that. And I will, as long as I occupy a seat up here, I will continue to fight to keep this town with that kind of character. And that is really the crux of what is going on here. We have to build affordable housing. We have to look at it wherever it is. It's designed in our growth policy to be sprinkled throughout the community. We, unfortunately, given the price of building, it has to be created in denser areas. And sometimes we have to give a little to get a little. And I just don't see I don't see the compromise much at all anymore. And if that's what's happened in our town, then it truly has changed.
Ben and then Rebecca.
So I find this to be one of the most difficult decisions I've had up here, and I wrestled with this for weeks. The reality is we need housing, and we do need it badly. And what we have in front of us is one proposal that may help with that. On the other hand, there are a lot of legitimate concerns that we've heard from a lot of people. And honestly, there is a lot of rational, thoughtful people that can come down on either side of this issue, and I know I've found myself struggling with it. So I look to our growth planning, as we're supposed to do up here in this decision-making process. And the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Plan has several pages devoted to this exact parcel. It summarizes in basically a sentence. It says, it is recommended that the application for development be for a planned unit development that will retain most of the suburban character of the site and the surrounding neighborhood. In the context of growth planning, suburban generally means something pretty close to single-family homes. There's multiple zoning districts underlying here, but that's generally speaking what the long-term planning says. Now, we have a process here that allows us to, in fact, the underlying zoning I don't even think provides for multifamily buildings at all, at least for most of it. Now, we have a process here that allows us to change that. And I think that's a good thing, but the problem here for me is it just seems like too much. It's like we take an area that is generally envisioned and relied upon as something close to single-family homes, and here we have a project that is the largest residential development in the history of the community. It just feels out of place. I don't mind the development. I actually think it'd be good to have somewhere. I just have issues with this location. I think a lot of people do. And all the problems that have been brought up with this, the traffic, the pedestrian access, safety, fire safety, health safety, community character, a lot of those are all extensions of this problem. The town, to me, just does not seem like it is designed for this size and scale of a development in this exact location. So there's been a lot of strong talk here, and I take this very seriously, and I know people get passionate about this stuff. But here's the thing for me. This is a predominantly market rate housing development, and the problem in our community and in the country as a whole is housing, frankly, is too expensive everywhere, and certainly here. I do believe that this community has said that this is not the correct solution to this lot, and I trust we will see you back here with a different proposal that will also have market rate housing. I'm sure it'll be a good number of it, but hopefully it'll be a little bit more reflective of what the community's long-term vision is in this area. So there's my summary. I mean, I know we're arguing about some details and finding of facts, but ultimately I do believe all of that rolls up to the simple fact that this is just not what we intended to be here. So, tough decision, but that is where I'm going to land on this. And if other folks disagree, I understand. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. Rebecca?
Just so, Steve, when we, I think it was 18 months, I think, Dave, that we did the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor planning, and our consultants, who are excellent planners, identified these key areas which we would grow. One of them turned into Alpenglow, which is an affordable housing project. We upzoned that intentionally through land use, changing the land use at the time of our planning to make that happen. And then there was another apartment complex that we upzoned intentionally through land use planning changes so that that would be allowed, because we knew that we were losing the apartments across the street because their 20-year agreement to keep them affordable was expiring. So we knew that there were certain areas that we could actually get things done really quickly. This one never really came in with a lot of agreement. The neighbors, because there's another adjacent property on the lake, the neighbors immediately came in with a lot of alarm and things like that. And so what we did was we did not change any of the underlying land use at that time, even though they'd hired a private planner to present things to us at several meetings, because we knew that it needed to be a very large community discussion, that the community all had some kind of a buy-in to this exact location, even though it's privately owned. And so we expected there would be a robust discussion. I personally think the community benefits were wonderful on this, and I really appreciate you working with the planning staff for that purpose. But we also have a lot of public investment in how this area grows because people love living out in that section. So I feel like as a city, even though it doesn't seem like we're basing it on facts because we're just listening to over nearly 4,000 people, We actually have had a long process to get us to this moment, and I do think that's one of the reasons that makes Whitefish so beautiful to me is if we really work together as a community, usually we end up with really a functional, charming town. And so when we get a really, really strong no, I think it's really important to listen to it. Really important, even if it's hard for the developers at the time, because they will come in with another project, I'm sure of it. And so I don't think it's our only opportunity for housing. But I do think in this particular location, it was very important to listen to the community because we knew that this was coming when we did the corridor planning.
Thanks, Rebecca. Further comments? Andy?
I'll try and be very brief. Steve, I agree with you on many, many counts, but I can't myopically sit here and put the blinders on and see only housing. I can't not see all of the other challenges that this piece of property has for this kind of development. And I was one of the people that, I sat on the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor study, and I was one of the people that opposed anything that proposed any commercial or anything on this piece of property because I knew what that piece of property was and I knew the challenges that it had. And I fully agree with you that no, we cannot try everything in the court of public opinion up here. And while we know there were 3,854, actually 3,853 people that signed the petition now, thanks to Heather retracting her vote there. And I'm guessing that given recent events and inclusion of housing and some of those things, we could maybe pull another 800 or so out of there. But we're still looking at a pretty overwhelming community outpouring of this is not what we want to see at this particular location. And I add all those things up in my head, and I'm just like Ben, and I think everybody sitting up here. It is a very difficult decision, but I hear Rhonda when she says we're looking at 24 net units here, and we have no guarantee on what those other units will ultimately end up renting for. None. Zero. I mean, they could rent for $2,000 a month. We don't know that right now. Yeah, it'll be housing, but we don't know who that housing will be for. Yeah, there'll be 24 apartments that we know will be affordable for people, but that's it. That's all we know. And it is a community benefit. I'm not arguing that that isn't important. But what I can't overlook is the fact that there's going to be another 230 there that wouldn't be necessarily. And all that does is exacerbate. And I also have to look at the fact that if we look at for dense housing in this community, we continually put it north of the viaduct. Where's all the dense housing in this community? It's all north of the viaduct. We've added 86 units just in the last couple of years, north of the viaduct. We've got other proposed projects out there in Texas. I know one's coming along that's going to be another big project. We look at all of the other apartments. I mean, we have clustered all of that housing. We continue to add density, 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 density that all ultimately feeds out on Wisconsin Avenue. And I do have to agree with Rhonda on this that, you know, housing is super important, but it does need to be integrated throughout the community. We can't just keep throwing it over north of the tracks and hope that someday the infrastructure issues will work themselves out. So I will support the motion.
With that, all those in favor of the motion as amended, please raise your hand. And those opposed, like sign, and the motion does carry on a 5-1 vote with Councilor Quinnell voting in opposition. That brings us on to ordinance 22-0 through, and I will need a motion separate of the previous ordinance.
John, that one will be 2202.
Excuse me, 2202. Thanks, Michelle. And this is for denial of the zone change. Rebecca.
I'll make a motion to deny 2202.
Is there a second to the
I
motion?
second that.
Seconded by Giuseppe. Further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. And those opposed, like sign, and that motion does carry on a 5-1 vote as well, with Councilor Quinnell voting in opposition. I wanted to thank everyone, including the applicant, for your time this evening, and it was a good discussion. Drive safe.